Charles walked through the grand halls of their country home, each of his footsteps reverberating off the polished marble floors. The mansion, inherited by his family through generations, had always been a symbol of security, an immovable anchor in his life. But lately, something had shifted. The air felt denser, the walls somehow colder. And at the center of it all was one person, Camilla, his wife. But why was everything feeling so wrong? Why did he feel as if his marriage was starting to crumble beneath him? The familiar, comforting sound of his own footsteps now felt foreign, ominous. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping through his fingers, and it had been happening for weeks now. For years, Camilla had been his constant, his equal partner in this vast estate. She was steady, reliable, always present. But now, Charles found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about her. It had all started 3 weeks ago, small changes at first, subtle shifts in her routine, in her behavior. Camilla, who had always been predictable, now seemed to slip away from him in the most unexpected ways. He noticed her disappearing for hours during the day, claiming to be in the garden or in the library. But when Charles checked those places, they were always empty. She had become a ghost in the very house they built their lives in. He asked the staff, but no one seemed to know where she went. Each day, the absence grew heavier, more pronounced. And with it, the gnawing suspicion that Camilla was hiding something, a secret she wasn't ready to share. Charles' mind raced, torn between disbelief and a rising sense of unease. He watched her with quiet attention, and every time she disappeared, a small, insistent voice in the back of his mind urged him to look deeper. This was no longer just a passing oddity. There was something more to it, something Camilla wasn't telling him. The days blurred together as Charles began to monitor her habits with greater scrutiny. It became apparent that her disappearances followed a clear, unsettling pattern. Every afternoon after lunch, she would offer vague excuses. She needed a rest, or there were letters to attend to. But when he checked the rooms she claimed to be in, they were always empty, the quiet, still air almost mocking him. The more he searched, the more elusive she became. Her absence weighed heavier each time, until it felt like a palpable presence in the house. And with each hour that passed without finding her, the knot in his stomach grew tighter. He began to wonder, was he just being paranoid? Was he overthinking this? Or was there something she truly was hiding? Camilla had always been the model of consistency, a wife who anchored their life, their home. The idea that she could be keeping secrets from him was unfathomable, yet the evidence, her unexplained absences, the way she now seemed to slip away unnoticed, could no longer be ignored. One evening, after another dinner filled with polite conversation and forced smiles, Charles found himself unable to stay quiet any longer. Camilla was relaxed, absorbed in a book about gardening, her soft voice murmuring aloud as she read. The fire in the hearth crackled, its warmth filling the space around them, but it did nothing to settle the coldness spreading in Charles' chest. He had reached the point where he could no longer pretend that everything was normal. "Darling," he said, his voice steady but quiet, setting aside his newspaper. He had been watching her for days, observing the way she moved through the house, how she now always seemed to be elsewhere. "I've been wondering where you've been spending your afternoons lately. I've looked for you several times, but it's like you've vanished without a trace." Camilla looked up at him, her smile thin and forced. Her eyes flickered for just a moment, betraying the facade she had so carefully crafted. "Oh, you know how it is," she said lightly, almost too lightly. "I've just been exploring different parts of the house. It's so large, and I've forgotten about some of the rooms. I've always meant to revisit them." Charles nodded, but a wave of unease rippled through him. Something about her response didn't feel right. He had grown up in this house. He knew every inch of it. There were no unexplored rooms, no forgotten spaces for her to discover. Her answer didn't hold the weight of truth. It felt rehearsed, as if she was trying to cover up something much deeper. The following day, Charles decided he would no longer let this go. If Camilla wasn't going to tell him the truth, he would have to find it himself. After lunch, as she excused herself once again with the usual unconvincing excuses, he waited. 5 minutes. Then, with careful steps, he followed her. He moved quietly through the hall, past the library and the music room, but there was no sign of her. He checked the library, hoping she might be there, surrounded by books. The room, though, was eerily quiet, with no sign of her presence. He moved to the music room, assuming she might have been playing the piano, but once again, the room was empty. As he moved through the house, a sense of frustration began to mount. Where could she be going? Why was she hiding? What was she keeping from him? Charles began to move with purpose now, covering the ground floor before slowly making his way upstairs, checking guest bedrooms, small parlors, and even the nursery that had long been abandoned. Yet, despite his thorough search, there was no trace of her. When Camilla returned for dinner that evening, she was as composed and cheerful as always. She spoke animatedly about the book she had been reading, sharing how peaceful her afternoon had been. But Charles, now deeply frustrated, listened to her words without truly hearing them. Every part of him was screaming for answers, but her smile, her calm demeanor gave nothing away. She was a master at hiding her true thoughts, and he was no closer to uncovering the truth. The next few days were a blur of calculated observation. Charles began to track the precise times when Camilla would disappear and when she would return. His mind was consumed with the need to understand where she went and why she was so elusive. It became evident that she was gone for 2 to 3 hours each afternoon, but it wasn't just the length of her absence that struck him. There was always something else, small traces of dust on her clothing, as if she had spent time in a forgotten, unused part of the house. The thought gnawed at him. What kind of place could it be that she didn't want him to know about? One afternoon, determined to get to the bottom of this, Charles decided to be more methodical. He would no longer follow her aimlessly or hope to stumble upon some clue. No, this time he would map out her movements deliberately. He started in the dining room where they had shared lunch and began to mentally trace her possible routes through the house. His path led him to the east wing, a part of the house they rarely used. This wing contained guest rooms, a small library, and some storage areas that had long since fallen into disuse. As he walked through this section of the house, every creak of the floorboards beneath his feet seemed amplified in the silence. He listened carefully, hoping to hear something, anything that might lead him to her. At the end of the east corridor, he stopped before a door he hadn't thought about in years. The sight of it stirred something deep in his memory, but it wasn't until he tried the handle and found it locked that his unease truly solidified. This was strange. There were no locked doors in this house. The family had always felt secure here. Why was this door locked? And why had it been kept so immaculate when other rooms in the wing had been neglected? Later that evening, Charles casually mentioned the locked door to Mrs. Henderson. She looked up, her face thoughtful before responding. "Oh, that room," she said. "Her ladyship asked us not to clean there anymore about a month ago. She said she wanted to sort through some personal things herself, and she needed privacy to do it properly." Privacy, the word lingered in the air like a dark cloud. Camilla had never mentioned any personal project requiring such secrecy. Why would she hide something from him now? What could she possibly be doing in that room that she didn't want him to know about? Days passed in a blur of quiet tension, and Charles found himself consumed with the need to know the truth. He couldn't stand the thought of being kept in the dark any longer. The locked room was the only lead he had, and he knew he needed to find out what was happening behind its closed door. But every time he thought about confronting Camilla, a sense of guilt washed over him. He didn't want to violate her privacy, but the fear of what he might discover was beginning to outweigh everything else. One evening after dinner, the drawing room felt unusually heavy. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting a warm, flickering light that danced across the room. Normally, this space felt peaceful, a haven for quiet conversation and relaxation, but tonight it felt different. The air hung thick with unspoken words. Camilla was sitting across from Charles, as usual, her attention absorbed by a book on gardening, her fingers delicately turning the pages. The soft rustle of the paper was the only sound breaking the stillness, but it felt too loud, too sharp in the silence between them. Charles put his newspaper down, the crinkling sound seeming to echo in the quiet room. He gazed at her, his eyes tracing the soft glow of firelight that framed her face, yet it was as if something between them had changed, something invisible but undeniable. "Darling," he began, his voice calm but tinged with an edge of concern. "I've been meaning to ask you, where have you been spending your afternoons lately? I've looked for you several times, but it's lick. You vanished into thin air." Camilla looked up, her smile quick and almost too perfect, her eyes betraying a flicker of discomfort. It was so brief that Charles almost missed it, but it didn't escape him. "Oh, you know," she replied, her tone light, almost too light, as if she were trying too hard to appear casual. "I've just been exploring different parts of the house. It's so large, and there are still rooms I haven't really seen in ages." Charles nodded, but something about her response didn't sit right with him. He had lived in this house for most of his life, had walked its hallways more times than he could count, and he knew every room, every hidden corner. There wasn't a single place in the mansion Camilla hadn't explored long ago, and yet her explanation felt too rehearsed, like a carefully crafted story that didn't quite align with the truth. The words, though spoken lightly, carried a weight that he couldn't ignore, a weight that only deepened his growing suspicion. The next day, Charles found himself restless, unable to shake the gnawing feeling in his chest. The growing doubts gnawed at him, pushing him to take action. After lunch, as Camilla excused herself, just as she had every other afternoon, Charles waited a few minutes before quietly slipping out of his study. He moved with purpose, his footsteps quiet against the floorboards, trying not to make a sound as he followed her. The house was vast, and though he knew it well, the corridors felt different now, longer, more labyrinthine. He walked through the main hall, past the library and the music room, but there was no sign of her. His heart quickened as he reached the library, hoping that she had taken refuge among the books. The tall bookshelves loomed over him, casting shadows on the floor. He peered behind them, checked the reading alcoves, empty. The silence in the room was almost deafening. He moved quickly, his frustration mounting as he headed toward the music room, thinking she might be playing the piano as she sometimes did when she needed to clear her mind. But that too was silent, a space devoid of life. She wasn't there either. Charles felt a wave of frustration roll through him. There was no reason for her to be so elusive, no reason for her to be hiding. His mind raced, questions forming faster than he could process them. He couldn't let it go, not now. He began searching more methodically, moving through the house with an intensity he hadn't known he was capable of. Room after room, hallway after hallway, he checked every space he could think of. The ground floor yielded no answers, and so he moved upstairs. He looked through the guest bedrooms, the small parlors, and even the nursery, the one room that had been unused for years, gathering dust like an old forgotten memory. Still, there was no sign of her. It was as though Camilla had vanished entirely from the house, slipping through its walls like a ghost. Each passing minute felt like an eternity, and the silence only deepened the mystery. The more he searched, the more frustrated he became. This wasn't normal. This wasn't his Camilla. She had always been present, always there, like a constant in the rhythm of their daily life. But now it was as if she had become someone else, someone he couldn't reach, someone he couldn't understand. Hours passed, and Charles, exhausted from his relentless search, returned to the dining room that evening with nothing but his growing unease. Camilla, as usual, seemed calm, almost serene, as if nothing had changed. She spoke about a book she had been reading, about a new flower she was thinking of planting in the garden. But Charles, hearing her words without truly listening, felt a hollowness spread through him. Her calm, her grace, it all seemed so out of place now. Was it an act? Was she pretending, or was he imagining things? For the next few days, Charles' suspicions only deepened. He paid even closer attention to Camilla's routines, to the way she moved through the house, to the times when she would disappear. Every afternoon, she would excuse herself, and every time he checked the rooms, they were empty. No matter where he looked, no matter how thoroughly he searched, there was no trace of her. His sense of unease bloomed into full-blown paranoia. He was no longer content to simply observe. He needed answers. He couldn't keep living in this limbo, not knowing what was happening, not understanding what was slipping through his fingers. One afternoon after lunch, Charles decided he would follow her, not with casual interest, but with determination. He waited for her to leave, and just like before, he slipped out of his study after a few minutes, moving silently through the house. This time, he didn't just drift aimlessly. He followed her route step by step, listening for any sound that would give her away, any sign that she was somewhere, hidden in plain sight. His search led him through the familiar halls, through rooms that had always felt like extensions of himself, but today they felt unfamiliar, almost alien. Every shadow seemed to whisper a secret. As he reached the end of the east corridor, the door caught his attention. It was the one he had tried earlier, locked just like before. The very door that now felt like the gateway to everything he had been searching for. It was a door that had never seemed important, one he had forgotten about in the hustle of life, but now it was all he could think about. Why was it locked? What was behind it? The silence around him felt suffocating as he approached the door again, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried the handle once more. No luck. The door remained stubbornly shut, just as it had when he had tried it before. But now, something about it seemed to hold a darker, more urgent significance. This was no longer just about a locked door. This was about the mystery he could no longer ignore, about the secret Camilla was keeping from him. When Camilla returned for dinner that evening, she was the picture of serenity, as if nothing had changed. Her voice flowed easily as she spoke animatedly about the book she had been reading, her eyes bright, her words effortlessly weaving a narrative of tranquility. She mentioned how peaceful her afternoon had been, how she had lost herself in the quiet corners of the house. Charles, though, could tell something was off. He listened carefully, his gaze never leaving her face, trying to catch any trace of hesitation in her words. But she spoke with such practiced ease that it was almost as if she were trying too hard to convince him, and herself, that everything was normal. Charles remained silent for a moment, his heart heavy with the burden of the growing unease that had taken root inside him. There was no telling how much time had passed since this feeling began, how long he had been living in a quiet fog of doubt. Now, as she spoke, her words felt like a carefully constructed narrative, an act designed to pull him back into the comfort of ignorance. But Charles couldn't escape the truth that gnawed at him. His wife was hiding something. And the more she smiled, the more he saw it. Her attempt to maintain the appearance of normalcy, to mask the reality that lay just beneath the surface. "I've been meaning to ask you, darling," he began, his voice calm but thick with unspoken tension. "Where have you been spending your afternoons lately? I've looked for you several times, but it's as if you vanished into thin air." Camilla looked up at him, her smile quick and unconvincing, though it didn't last long enough to disguise the fleeting flicker of discomfort that passed across her face. It was a momentary shift, too brief to be caught by most, but it didn't escape Charles. It was a subtle betrayal, an unspoken admission that something was wrong. "Oh, you know," she replied, her voice light and almost too carefree. "I've been exploring different parts of the house. It's so large, and there are still rooms I haven't really seen in ages." Her laugh was too quick, too practiced, as if she were trying to brush away any suspicion with the wave of her hand. Charles nodded slowly, but inside his doubts were deepening. He had lived in this house his entire life. He knew every room, every corridor, every dark corner. There was nothing in this house that Camilla hadn't explored long before, nothing that she could suddenly find anew. And yet, here she was, giving him an answer that felt not just untrue, but intentionally misleading. It wasn't the answer of a wife who had nothing to hide. It was the answer of someone trying to conceal something, someone who feared that the truth, once spoken, would unravel the delicate web they had spun. The next day, Charles decided that he couldn't simply sit by and let the question fester. The gnawing curiosity, mixed with a sense of betrayal, was becoming unbearable. After lunch, just as Camilla excused herself for what he had come to expect as her daily retreat, Charles waited. His mind raced with questions, each one leading to another, spinning him further into the labyrinth of his thoughts. After a few minutes, he quietly slipped out of his study, determined to follow her. He moved carefully through the halls of the house, making no sound as he moved past rooms he had passed 1,000 times. His footsteps felt too loud, as though they were betraying him, but he forced himself to focus, to keep his mind clear. He passed the library, the music room, and the sitting rooms, all the usual places where she might have gone, but there was no sign of her. His pulse quickened with each step as he made his way deeper into the house, moving like a shadow, his movements deliberate but silent. He reached the library, which was usually a sanctuary for Camilla, a place where she could lose herself among the pages of her favorite books. He pushed open the door and scanned the room carefully, checking behind the towering bookshelves, the little read-in. Alcoves tucked into the corners. It was empty, silent, no sign of Camilla. He moved on to the music room where she often played the piano, losing herself in the melodies of the past. But that too was deserted. The piano sat untouched, the silence in the room almost oppressive. The more rooms he checked, the more the sense of frustration settled over him. It was as if she had disappeared, vanished from the house entirely. After more than an hour of searching, Charles made his way to the upstairs bedrooms, checking each guest room, the small parlors, and even the old nursery. There was no trace of her. It was as if Camilla had become a ghost, slipping through his fingers every time he thought he was getting closer. With each passing minute, his anxiety turned into something darker, something closer to fear. What was going on? Why couldn't he find her? Why was she hiding from him? When she returned for dinner that evening, Camilla was as calm as ever, her voice light as she talked about a book she had read and how much she had enjoyed the quiet afternoon. She seemed completely unaware of the storm brewing inside Charles, the questions that now crowded his every thought. He listened to her speak, but all he could think about was her absence. Where had she been? Why had she been avoiding him? And why was it so difficult to get a straight answer? Charles spent the following days observing Camilla with an increasing sense of obsession. He tracked the exact time she disappeared, noting how consistently she left each afternoon. 2 to 3 hours every day. But what disturbed him most were the small details that didn't add up. He noticed that when Camilla returned, there would often be faint traces of dust on her clothing, as though she had been somewhere forgotten, somewhere she didn't want him to see. It wasn't the kind of dust that would come from being in the garden or the library. No, this dust felt different, older, as if it had come from a place long neglected, a room that hadn't been visited in years. Charles' thoughts became more frantic. He couldn't continue like this, waiting for something to happen, hoping for answers that never came. He needed to know where she was going and why. One afternoon, when Camilla excused herself again, Charles knew it was time to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't keep letting her slip away, couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when his suspicions were growing into certainty. He decided to follow her again, but this time he wouldn't just wander through the house aimlessly. He would plan his steps, trace the route he believed she was taking. He would find the answers he was looking for. As he walked through the house, moving with deliberate care, Charles found himself drawn to the east wing. It was an area that was rarely used, filled with guest rooms, a small library, and storage spaces that hadn't been visited in years. If there was any place where Camilla might go to be alone, this was it. When he reached the end of the corridor, he stopped in front of the door that had caught his attention earlier. He had grown up in this house, walked these halls 1,000 times, and yet this door had remained a distant memory, tucked away among the many other rooms. But now it felt significant, charged with meaning. He tried the handle. Locked. Charles' heart skipped a beat. He stepped back, staring at the door in disbelief. Most of the doors in this house were never locked. The idea of a locked door in this house was foreign, uncomfortable. The family had always felt safe here. So why was this door locked? And more importantly, why had it been maintained so carefully? The wood, dark oak like all the others, had been recently polished. He ran his fingers over the surface, the smooth texture beneath his fingertips feeling strangely out of place in this part of the house, where rooms had been left to decay over the years. That evening after dinner, Charles casually approached Mrs. Henderson, his mind reeling with the discovery. "Mrs. Henderson," he asked, keeping his tone light, but there was an edge to his words, "I noticed a locked door in the east wing today. Do you know what it's used for?" Mrs. Henderson paused for a moment, her brow furrowing. "Oh, that room," she said slowly. "Her ladyship asked us not to clean in there anymore about a month ago. She said she wanted to organize some personal things herself and needed privacy." The words hit Charles like a punch to the stomach. Privacy? Camilla had never mentioned wanting to organize anything in that room, and she had never asked for privacy. Why would she need to keep something from him? Why hadn't she told him about this? What was behind that locked door? The need for secrecy was too much to ignore. Charles' suspicions were now undeniable, and the growing sense of betrayal was like a weight pressing down on his chest. This room, this hidden part of the house, was no longer just a forgotten space. It had become the symbol of everything he feared. Something was happening behind that door, something that Camilla wasn't ready to share with him. And whatever it was enough to shatter the trust they had built over the years. Charles' mind raced as he returned to the room. This secret space, this hidden world, he needed to know what it contained. But could he truly face what lay behind that locked door? What if it changed everything? As he stood at the threshold, the weight of the truth about to be revealed felt unbearable. Was Camilla the woman he thought she was? Or had their life together been built on a foundation of secrets and lies? If you want to find out what Charles discovers behind that locked door and how the truth about Camilla will shake the very foundation of their marriage, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part of this gripping story. Let us know in the comments what you think is hiding behind that door. Your theories might just be the key to unraveling the mystery. If you want more twists and suspense like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications. Also, leave a comment with your thoughts on Camilla's secret. What do you think she's hiding? Your guesses might just be closer to the truth than you think.